Hello, Gold viewers from around the world. I'm Kristen Schwartz, licensed midwife and MC for Gold Learning. And here at Gold, we are preparing for the Gold Neonatal Online Conference of 2020. That's just around the corner. Basically, we get started tomorrow here. And with me here today is one of our speakers. It's wonderful to have you here, Professor Minesh Khashu.
Hello, Carson. Yeah, welcome everybody.
It's wonderful to have you here. And I know you will be presenting for us, and we're going to talk about the presentation in just a little while. But where in the world are you located?
So I'm in Dorset, which is a beautiful little county in the south coast of England, so almost midway in the south coast of England.
Mhm.
And my hospital is about 5-6 miles from home. And yeah, it's a really beautiful part of the world. So I would encourage all people who are traveling to the UK to come and visit Dorset.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for that. So let's talk a bit about your work here as well. You have specialties both in pediatrics and neonatology. Tell our listeners a little bit about, your background, your work, what you're working on now, what you're excited about.
Sure, yeah, well, yeah. So I originally, Kirsten, trained in India, and then I trained in England, and then I actually trained in Canada as well, and then I came back and I've settled finally in England. So I actually no longer do general pediatrics work. So I'm a full-time neonatologist now, though I'm accredited both for pediatrics and neonatology, but I only do neonatal work. So the real job, what I call the real job, is a full-time job as a neonatologist in a hospital here in Poole in Dorset. In addition to that clinical work, I'm a professor of perinatal health at Bournemouth University. So we do some research, and one of the areas of research is neonatal nutrition, and the other one is about fathers' experiences of neonatal care. I also have interests in neonatology in necrotizing enterocolitis, which a lot of the viewers would know is a serious condition in newborns.
Mhm.
In addition to this clinical work, I also have interests in general healthcare in terms of leadership in healthcare, in terms of large scale change and quality improvement.
That sounds fascinating. So you're very busy there. You're not only working in, in your hospital, in your unit there, but also doing research work, and you're interested in large-scale projects. How big is your unit there, your neonatal unit where you're working now?
So the neonatal unit that I worked at, so we cater to about 5,000 deliveries in a year.
Mm-hmm.
And we have 20 beds in the unit and 8 transitional care beds. So in total, about 28 cots
Mm-hmm.
and about 5,000 deliveries a year.
Wow, that's a nice size unit right there. And let me ask you this. Of course, we are still here with COVID-19. Have you seen any cases in your hospital there, or have any babies been impacted that you see?
No, we have. So we've seen obviously patients with the COVID-19, but fortunately,
Mm-hmm.
none of the mums or babies have been directly affected. We had some suspected cases, but they didn't prove to be positive. So in a lot of ways, we're quite thankful that it hasn't affected our maternity population and our newborns.
Oh, that's good to know. That's something to be thankful for sure. So tell me about your unit there as well. Is it it's obviously a NICU, a neonatal unit. Are families able to room in, or how does it work in your unit?
Yeah, it does. We pride ourselves in being quite a family-centered unit, and even during the COVID outbreak, we've been one of the few units which has continued to support fathers, because a lot of the maternity units in this part of the world and other parts of the world restricted entry for fathers during the COVID pandemic. But we're one of the units which has continued. There obviously are checks and balances in place, but we're one of the units which has continued to um, encourage both parents to attend, because we think
Mhm.
that's quite important for them as well as for their baby.
Absolutely. Oh, that's wonderful that you are able to keep the family unit together. That is wonderful to hear because, around the world we hear of cases where women had to give birth alone without their partners, and, how difficult it is for the family there. So that's nice to hear that you have that in place for your families. You specialize, one of your special interests is, of course, fathers, and your presentation here at Gold is titled, It's My Baby Too, Improving Fathers' Experiences of Neonatal Care. How how did that become a topic of research for you and of interest?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Kirsten. So this was about 8-10 years back. We started exploring the fact that we felt fathers were largely ignored in maternity and neonatal services, and to some extent almost treated, I would say, within inverted commas, as second-class citizens, so to say,
Hmm.
within these domains. And I think in maternity and neonatal services, there's obviously a focus on mothers, and rightly so, because they are giving birth, and we need to support them. But I think we felt that fathers perhaps were not getting the support that they needed, and this led to us setting up a group with some colleagues at Bournemouth University to explore this. So we did some systematic reviews, looked at the literature, and published that. And then one thing led to another. Then we did some work with a global group of researchers through something called a family initiative, which brought actually researchers interested in fathers' experiences from all over the world together. And I chair that research group.
Hmm.
So we then published what the current practice was, and where we felt that the current practice globally was falling short in terms of fathers.
Hmm.
And that's largely a focus of my talk with the Gold Neonatal Conference, is sharing with your delegates what the current practice internationally is, and what we have as a research group globally highlighted are areas that need to get better. So we have come up
Hmm.
with 3 core principles. We have come up with 12 specific recommendations, and we're hoping that your delegates will take those core principles and recommendations to their respective units,
Hmm.
and make their units much more father friendly, make their units the best they can be to support fathers. And the reason we're so focused on fathers is because currently fathers' experiences are not optimal. It
Hmm.
has an impact not just on fathers' health and their attachment with their baby, but that in itself then has an impact on family outcomes, on infant outcomes. So um, uh, a lack of good bonding between father and baby, a lack of good bonding uh, can impact family dynamics, it can impact family safety, it can impact the baby's outcome as well as maternal outcomes. To give an example, um, we might say that breastfeeding is largely for the mom to do, but we have clear evidence through research and practice that actually dads can play a big role in the success of breastfeeding, just as a
Hmm.
simple example. So I think focusing on fathers has benefits not just for the fathers or the mothers, for whole family and infant outcomes. And I'm hoping that we will get some of your delegates excited to go back to their units and do some of this work.
Absolutely. That sounds absolutely fascinating. And yeah, you're right. We have come, there has been improvements in the neonatal care unit, especially we started, way back. All the focus, of course, was on the baby, of course, on the medical interventions that were needed, the medical uh,
Yeah.
procedures that need to be done. And then the focus shifted to the mom. We figured how important breastfeeding was for nutrition, but then also for bonding. But you're right. Often the dad was kind of like the bystander, so to the one
Sure.
who is doing all the insurance stuff and the paperwork and stuff. So it took, and over the years, of course, it has gotten much better. Dads are more involved now than there were, and but there is still a lot of work to be done. And I'm so grateful that you're doing this work, because as you mentioned, there is so much to it. It's not just it has a huge impact on outcomes, also for the baby, for the whole family unit there as well. And what is fascinating to me is you mentioned international global research there. Have you come across any of the cultural differences there? I mean, we see in the West how the father is viewed there, and maybe in other cultures and countries the role of the father is different. How does this all work together?
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely cultural differences. Having said that, with globalization, with more cosmopolitan cultures, that difference is slowly sort of getting narrower and narrower. But there are definitely some cultural differences. So for example, if you look at some of the Asian countries, if you look at some of the African countries, traditionally the father's role was largely a breadwinner,
Mhm.
and they used to not get too much involved, especially in the initial sort of phase of an infant's life. I think that is changing.
Mhm.
But even in the West, where we would think that mums and dads would be much more at par with each other in terms of rights, they are in terms of sort of their sort of rights or access to the baby, they are, but there is still um, a thinking within society that it's mums who are the primary caregivers and dads are
Mhm.
not, and I think that needs to change. And that's why if you look at our published sort of report, we have suggested that it needs to be a co-parenting paradigm.
Mhm.
Mom and dad both need to co-parent
Absolutely.
for us to get the best results. So I think that's a big shift we want society to make.
Wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful there as well. And so tell us a little bit, you mentioned that what the presentation will be about. And you also said it will be encouraging people to go back to their unit to provide change. Now, you mentioned something early on, you're also involved in quality improvement. So what you suggest is, are there any efforts that are currently being done to take your model of care that you have established in your hospital, to take it, make it scalable, so other units are able to learn from that and take that on as well?
Sure. Yeah, there are. So I think as part of, yeah, you're right. I think quality improvement and large scale change is one of my areas of interest. So I will share with the delegates some potential ways in which they can look at it from a quality improvement perspective and improve others' experiences. I'll also share as part of the presentation some examples of good practice. So one of the examples will be from my unit in terms of a special package and a special tool we have developed for fathers. But
Mhm.
I'll also share some good examples of from say Australia and a few other places where people have uh, done some really good work to improve others' experiences. And a lot of these conferences, like the Gold Conference, is about sharing good practice, about learning from each other. And I'm sure we will learn a lot from some of the delegates as well, who might have good practice that I'm not aware of, and we'll get to know that. We'll get to know that as part of the online forum and as part of discussions during my presentation.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a wonderful part. We had a little sneak peek about your presentation earlier on today, and there will be a lot of involvement there from the delegates and interactive elements. So, and I'm looking forward to this, because you're so right. We can always learn from each other. There might be something that one unit is doing, or even one person is doing, that could be make a huge improvements, and that we could take into our units there as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I think we're all learning. We're all learning every day. So I'm sure
Yes.
we'll learn from each other.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Minesh Khashu, for sitting down here with me and chatting about your work and the presentation here at Gold. It's been a pleasure.
It was a pleasure, my end as well. Thank you very much.
And for our listeners now, the presentation, It Is My Baby Too, Improving the Father's Experience of Neonatal Care, is going to be live on June 1st and is part of the Gold Neonatal Online Conference of 2020. We have over 11 or 10 hours of accredited education for you in that conference. We have over 10 international speakers participating in the conference. If you would like to learn more about this presentation and all the other presentations in the conference, we would like to invite you to go to goldneonatal.com. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Bye bye for now.